There are details about recent news wrap is broadcasted by United Nations and details as it read as follows. Even Daily News, Global Perspective, Human Story, 11 November 2022. From Asian, 12 Asian Event Summit is being organized, and Asian states well placed to advance human rights, freedom, and a strong global economy. As deepening divisions threaten global peace and security, dangerous rhetoric is rising nuclear tension. The UN chief told a meeting of Asian leaders in Cambodia on Friday. Let us follow the news further. Like uh, um, Secretary General has participated into the meeting. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations UN Summit in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. Details are as follows. As deepening division threatens global peace and security, dangerous rhetoric is rising nuclear tension, the UN chief told a meeting of Asian leaders in Cambodia on Friday. Speaking at the 12th Asian UN Summit, Secretary General Antonio Guterres painted a picture of many in the global south, battered by COVID and the climate crisis, restricting access to food, energy, and finance, and global insecurity, triggering new conflicts while making it increasingly difficult to end old ones. He also drew attention to a global economy divided into two parts, led by the United States and China, with two different sets of rules, currencies, interest, and conflicting strategies on artificial intelligence. This decoupling must be avoided at all cost, he said, noting that member states of the region blocs are particularly well placed to help bridge it. like uh, I'm pushing at G20 organization leaders to adopt an SDG stimulus that will provide governments of the global south with the investment and liquidity that need and speed up debt relief and debt restructuring. He upheld the need to find multilateral solutions, weather geopolitical storms, and get the Sustainable Development Goals back on track, saying that regional organizations, including ASEAN, have a vital role to play. From Myanmar, the political, security, human rights, and humanitarian situation in Myanmar is sliding ever deeper into catastrophe. The UN chief continued condemning the escalating violence, disproportionate use of force, and appalling human rights situation in the country, recalling that under international law, indiscriminate attack on civilian may constitute war crimes. He repeated his call that the Myanmar authorities release all political prisoners and launch an inclusive process immediately to return to the democratic transition as the only route to lasting peace and security. Welcoming ASEAN's 5 point consensus, he urged all countries to seek an unified strategy centered on the needs and aspirations of the people of Myanmar and advocated for open borders, protection, and assistance to refugees from them. Like no refugee should be forced to return to suffering and danger, he said, reiterating the need for urgent action by the Myanmar authorities to create conditions for the voluntary return of almost 1 million Rohingya refugees. The humanitarian situation in Myanmar remains disparate. He continued, reaffirming the UN's close coordination with the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance on Disaster Management and other humanitarian partners. About climate action, fresh from the UN COP27 climate conference in Egypt, he said that he had urged leaders there that high emitting countries must meet the urgency of this moment. The UN chief reminded that developed economies must cut emissions by 45% by 2030 to reach carbon neutrality by mid century, mobilize their annual $100 billion pledge to support developing countries in addressing climate impact and building resilience and adaptation, and come to an agreement on compensating countries that did nothing to create this crisis. He also promoted a historic climate solidarity pact between developed and emerging economies that combines their capacities and resources for the benefit of humankind. Wealthier countries, multilateral development banks, and technological companies must provide financial and technical assistance at a scale so emerging economies can transition to renewable energy, he said, while commending the Asian countries that have already risen to the challenge for a just transition to renewables. The top UN official urged those that have not to raise their climate ambition, starting with eliminating new coal investments and phasing out coal power by 2030 for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) countries and 2040 for all others. Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed Association of Southeast Asian Nations UN Summit in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. About debt relief restructuring, the UN chief said that the crisis in accessing food, energy, and finance will be his top priority at next week's G20 summit in Bali. He said that I am pushing G20 leaders to adopt an SDG stimulus that will provide governments of the global south with the investments and liquidity they need and speed up debt relief and debt restructuring, he informed the meeting. We are also working with all stakeholders to extend the Black Sea Grain Initiative and to increase supplies of fertilizer, which cost up to three times more than before the pandemic. About ASEAN's essential role in closing, the Secretary General expressed gratitude for ASEAN's strong partnership and steadfast commitment to multilateralism and regional cooperation. He also highlighted the country's essential role in advancing human rights, fundamental freedom, and inclusive political participation, as well as in the development of a strong global economy. The United Nations will remain your resolute partner throughout the challenge ahead, assured the UN chief. So you can also access the daily updates directly in your inbox from UN. You can subscribe by following links, or you can follow the links given on the things to know about the latest updates. Let us review about the latest development solutions available by WHO. About this one, like day 6 of the COP27 is going on, and initiatives were taken regarding decarbonization and negotiations, and US President Biden said that let us review this. COP27 newsletter. Day 6 Decarbonization negotiations, and US President Biden on the spotlight this Friday. COP27 has officially reached its midway point. Delegates are wrapping up the first part of the negotiations, which have a more technical focus. This year, they are centered on the implementation details of the rules of the Paris Agreement, finalized last year in Glasgow. The COP27 presidency has said that while there is good progress in many areas, a few items are said to be more complex, including the highly debated creations of loss and damage fund to compensate developing countries for climate impacts. Selvin Hart, special advisor to the UN Secretary General on Climate Action, explained to UN News that government ministers will be arriving next week to devote time to resolve this and some of the other big picture political issues. The clock is ticking. How to address the massive emission gap, finance, and loss and damage are major political issues. Parties, delegations, and countries are then very focused on trying to resolve as much as possible while ensuring that the outcomes are as credible and match the level of ambitions that the science demands. He also gave us insight as a former negotiator. Next week will be the official period when delegates will get less sleep, and for sure, this newsletter editor too. Outside of the negotiations rooms, today was Decarbonization Day at COP27, and the conference was abuzed with proposed solutions and demonstrations from different sectors looking to reduce their carbon emissions, including the steel, cement, gas, and even the fashion industry. We tell you all about it and more in our daily wrap. Meanwhile, African civil society also continued calling for justice and pushing for an end to our global dependency on fossil fuels, giving heart wrenching testimonies of the reality of climate change in vulnerable countries. Our message is simple: keep fossil fuel on the ground. A Ugandan activist told the main squares of the conference, also asking leaders from development countries to pay up on their promised climate finance. I also told President Joe Biden made a special appearance after missing the high level summit earlier this week due to the midterm elections in the United States. Participants crowded into the main plenary to listen to his speech, which lasted just over 20 minutes and quoted UN Chief Antonio Guterres. We are racing forward to do our part to avert the climate hell that the UN Secretary General so passionately warned about. He cautioned, calling for unity and promising that the US will reach its emission reduction goal by 2030. Activists, however, were quick to react to his words, denouncing that he did not address the call for a loss and damage fund, the thorniest issue on the table at COP27. There are still 7 days left of the conference, and history has not been written yet. In the meantime, we recap for you the highlights of the past week in today's episode of our signature podcast. You can see where you can learn more about the issues that are at the center of this COP27. Today's wrap: fossil fuels are a dead end, says top UN climate advisor on Decarbonization Day at COP27. Negotiations sharing solutions aimed at curbing emissions by the world's biggest polluting industries, as well as continued call for climate justice and finance for hard hit developing countries, were in the spotlight on Friday as the latest UN climate conference reached its midway point in Egypt. Another one, the ladies on the podcast at COP27, like COPs are a marathon, not a sprint. During the first week, country negotiators set the parameters for the serious and often exhausting horse trading that begin next week when ministers fly in with the aim of hammering out a consensus agreement by the end of the conference. On today's show, Laura and Connor spoke to Selvin Hart, the UN Secretary General's Special Advisor on Climate, and Runa Hens, a climate negotiator for the Alliance of Small Island States, about the progress made so far. And Connor sits down with former supermodel turned environmental activist Lily Cole on how to bring the huge environmental cost of the fashion industry under control. It's about COP27, which is being held at Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt. We encourage you to forward and share the content and to sign up like you haven't. The quote of the day is from Selville Hunt, a special advisor to the Secretary General on climate action. For us to meet our global climate goals and prevent the worst impact of the climate crisis, we need to get out of fossil fuels as quickly as possible. From UN Africa Renewable at COP27, why top African companies are backing the climate fight. Another news about the same is given that other feature videos are the cup of coffee with the youth, Len women, and Abe denies change for planet delegates at COP27 join the Connect for Climate team in the Italian pavilion for a friendly cup of coffee chat. Learn what the event meant to them and why they are excited to be participating about this event. So let us watch this.
Hi, I'm Mia. please, like, tell me, is there something that at this first conference that stood out to you? What are your sort of takeaway messages from the first few days at COP?
Well, the first thing is that I'm really fascinated that actually this COP being itself is the first where we have had loss and damage finance being discussed, and that is something for us that come from the global south and the most affected people. What do you really find fascinating about your first COP?
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting, just with like loss and damage, that the first time that it's actually brought up at COP, which seems wild at the 27th COP. The same with the youth pavilion. It's actually the first youth pavilion at a conference, but it's so exciting because the energy there is so amazing, and I just think that's such an important development that's happened. And I think it's a way for youth to speak up about our future and to sort of highlight our voices, bring them forward, and to sort of see that energy bring forward. I mean, for me, it was so exciting today because I spoke at the youth pavilion, read some of my poems, and I'm really looking forward to sort of having that space of meeting with other people and meeting with youth activists. That's something that excites me. But like, tell me, what is something that you're looking forward to over the next few days?
Well, in the next few days, I expect to hear everyone having the political will to actually implement all these policies and decisions they talk about. Because in most cases, we have the words, but we do not have the political will to sort of implement all the words, all the decisions, the promises that are always made. So in the next few days, I hope we can see more political will of decision makers, policy makers, and young people's voices being amplified.
Yeah, because we really need words, not just words, but we need actions.
Yeah.
Thanks for the cup of coffee together.